Again, I'm Rob Satloff, the director of the Washington Institute, and I'm delighted to welcome people from all over the world to this special conversation we're having with the head of the New Hope Party in Israel, contender for the Prime Ministership of Israel, former member of Knesset, Gideon Saar. I know that we already have visitors on this conversation from countries around the Middle East, since I've already received questions to factor into this conversation from Egypt, from Morocco, from Sudan, from all over. So this is quite an opportunity. Just a word about our guest, Gideon Saar, 54 years old, born in Tel Aviv, grew up in Sde Boker, Ben Gurion's kibbutz, where his father was a physician. Found a political home, though, at the other side of the spectrum, in the Likud, and rose up to the most senior levels of the Likud, serving as Minister of Education, Minister of Interior in different Likud-led governments, was the top-ranked person on the Likud list after the Prime Minister. Took a time out from politics, then eventually returned, ran for the Likud leadership, was not successful, and eventually opted to create his own party, New Hope, which is running in the fourth Israeli election in the last 2 years. It is appropriate that we have just celebrated in America Groundhog Day, the day where things keep repeating. And for the fourth time in 2 years, we're having a repetition of this parliamentary exercise in Israel. But one of the new innovations in this election is the candidacy of Gideon Saar and the presence of his new party. And the purpose of today's conversation is to afford Mr. Saar a platform to introduce himself to Washington, although he's a well-known figure among those of us that follow Israeli politics closely, but for us to have a conversation about why he's running for prime minister, what his ideas are, and what the prospects for a government led by him and New Hope will have for Israel, for America, and for the broader region. So it's a real delight, Gideon, to welcome you to this conversation.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be with you today. I visited in your institute a couple of years ago. I hope to be there soon, but now we must do it in Zoom, unfortunately, due to the circumstances. And I'm happy to be with you.
Very good. Well, I'm delighted that you could join us. So let's begin with the obvious question, if it's all right, Gideon. Why run for prime minister? What makes you ready, worthy, ready, and able to serve as prime minister of the state of Israel?
You in America, you have 2 campaigns or 2 times elections within 4 years. We now in the 4th election campaign in 2 years. And I think it's the highest from all times in terms of instability. And we must today work in order to restore stability and to bring about unity to our nation. And this is my mission. Current Prime Minister failed in bringing back stability, even though he led a 70-something coalition in the Knesset, national unity government that was supported in the public and in the Knesset itself quite widely. But unfortunately, he preferred his interests over the good of the country, as I see it. And therefore, we needed to create a change in Israel. And this is what I'm trying to do now. I have enough experience. This is my 7th Knesset. I was 2 times cabinet secretary. I served, as you said, as a minister in the most important portfolios. And I led significant reforms then. And mainly I put Israel first. which is the most important thing today. So this is why change is needed, and this is why I think I can do it.
In this unusual political moment, I have to ask you, on what policy matters do you see yourself differentiating yourself from the incumbent? Or is this, as much as anything else, a referendum on the incumbent?
I believe that today the main challenges of Israel are domestic. And unfortunately, no one is dealing with them right now. I'm speaking about bringing back stability, which is not only political stability, it influences, of course, economic stability, social stability. I think today it is extremely important to unite the nation again and to try to break this circle of ongoing election campaigns. It is, of course, extremely important to restore our economy after a very difficult year of coronavirus crisis. It is a huge challenge for us to improve our education system and bring our education system to be one of the leading education systems in the world. And I believe we have the human resources to do that. We must restore also our governance in all parts of the land, which is something we are not doing, unfortunately, today. So I believe these domestic challenges that was neglected for the last years should be dealt in first priority after the formation of the new government. In terms of our relations with the US, we must restore the principle and the bipartisan support in America, and we must also work with all segments of American civil society. And I think these are the urgent things that new government in Israel should deal with.
So, Gideon, you grew up in the Likud, and you were a leader of the Likud. What happened to the party? Why a new party? What does New Hope stand for that is different ideologically than what the Likud stands for?
Well, we faced a situation, and unfortunately, we are facing a situation when cult personality came instead of principles and values. And I prefer to be loyal to the values and principles that brought me to the Likud from the first place. And today, the most important thing is to see what is the interest in the Likud, what is Netanyahu's interest, and to fit yourself into this paradigm. And this is not what the Likud was in the past, unfortunately. And New Hope Party is a center-right party, and which is a party that commit itself to unite the nation, which became very important in Israel today. The Likud, as its name says, should unite the nation. But unfortunately, if you will ask Israelis today, regardless differences of opinion, very few people will say Likud under the leadership of Netanyahu can unite the people.
So let me pursue this question of unity. It's a question that we talk about a lot in America. It was the theme of Joe Biden's inaugural address. Let me ask you, in the Israeli context, to achieve unity, how does a party which has a strong ideological bent, which you suggest New Hope has, how do you create a coalition that would span all the parties that want new leadership in Israel, when the ideology could go from, center left all the way over to even further right than where you are? How do you achieve unity in that
First of all, in our system, we deal with coalition after we pass the elections. We still have 41 days to go. That's a lot of time. But I can tell you, Rob, that I know I will have to work hard in order to bridge over differences between different people, between different parties. But today, when we are talking about the reality that Corona crisis created in Israel, but not only in Israel, it is not only possible, I think it is something we must do, because the things we will have to take care of to create new jobs, to restore our economy, to build ourselves again after this crisis are not things which are in dispute or in ideological dispute among different parties. So I think it is possible to bridge over this kind of gaps, and I think it is also necessary today. What, in addition to that, I think is that a new government shouldn't rely on extremists. In order to have now a stable government, we need a government that will not rely on extremists. And this will be a heavy task, but I believe it is a possible task. If Netanyahu won't have 61 mandates in order to form a new coalition, I think we will have more than one option to form an alternative coalition. And this is definitely what we will try to do after the elections.
A moment ago, you made reference to Israel's struggle with the coronavirus, which of course all countries are wrestling with. Netanyahu is running on a platform in which he makes a claim that Israel will be the first country to defeat COVID through mass vaccination. Is this a reasonable claim in your view?
Well, first of all, Netanyahu announced at least 2 times in the past. The last time was about a month ago that the coronavirus belongs to the past and we won. But the truth is we are far from winning this battle. And there are still huge problems that we are facing these days. It's not a simple situation, not from the health point of view, not from the point of view of the economy. And I think it requires a sense of humility. We still don't know a lot about the virus, about different mutations. We still think, we see the vaccination process is going well, but still we don't see that we passed in terms of the people in hospitals and so on and so forth. We are still not over the crisis. So I would say Israelis are satisfied from the progress in the vaccination process, but Israelis don't think that this government succeeded with managing this crisis, not at all. We had a lot of issues from failure in enforcement of the law, failure in our to check those people who came from abroad through our one international airport, which was a huge failure during almost 1 year. And people are not satisfied with the way that the government hadn't worked enough that the kids will go to school and so on and so forth. So I would say we shouldn't celebrate before the whistle.
Okay, very good. Let me just remind viewers who have joined in on various platforms that we're speaking with Gideon Saar, the founder and head of the New Hope Party in Israel. Israel is facing Knesset elections in about less than 6 weeks. And Mr. Saar's party will be a major force in the outcome of these elections. If you have questions to factor into this conversation, please feel free to email them directly to me at rsatloff@washingtoninstitute.org, or to use the Q&A function on your Zoom if you're on that platform. Actually, if I can, let's ask about a couple of foreign policy issues that touch on the interests of many of our viewers. Gideon, you're on record as opposing the creation of a Palestinian state. What is your rationale? What is your preferred alternative? And how do you think this will factor into your relations with Washington in the event that you eventually become Prime Minister Saar?
First of all, the rationale is following the experience we had, not only during the last 3 decades with an attempt to solve the crisis or the conflict with this kind of slogan, 2 states for 2 nations, but also, and as you know, Mr. Barak and Mr. Olmert offered a very generous suggestions, but the Palestinians never accepted them and made it clear that they are not in a situation of willingness to solve this crisis with us. But even if we look back forward to the days before the formation of our state, to the Peel Committee, to the partition resolution of the UN, this idea was more than 80 years and the center of efforts to solve the conflict, but it always failed. And it's a question whether it is realistic, if such a state is viable at all. How can we implement the idea with 2 separate Palestinian entities with 2 different regimes? How can we...
West Bank and Gaza.
Yeah. How can we protect the security of the citizens of Israel with a sovereign state in the heart of our land, few miles from the most populated areas of our country? And we had the experience of the withdrawal from Gaza Strip. We uprooted all civil and military presence in Gaza Strip. And since then, we didn't have more stability and security, but we got less. And those who are speaking about demilitarization of an evacuated territory found out it's not simple at all to do that. And if you want to do with that, you can achieve that only with huge bloodshed, and it will not last for a very long time. So all these questions, putting huge question marks over the realistic component of this idea. One thing is quite clear. We, in 2 steps, Oslo Accords, creation of Palestinian Authority on the 90s, and the decade afterwards with the disengagement plan from Gaza, we went out from the populated Palestinian areas. And they are today, the vast majority of the Palestinian population, they are not controlled by Israel, they are controlled by their own people, Hamas in Gaza Strip and the PA in Judea and Samaria. So on the ground, you had a creation of separation de facto on the ground. And I would say I support the maximum autonomy for the Palestinians to rule their life, and with the minimum ability to harm the security of the state of Israel. This can be the formula. I would say also that we'll need to find a regional component, a regional component in the solution itself. I think that it is very important to combine our neighboring states, Jordan and Egypt, in the solutions themselves. I don't want to elaborate on the issue, but I think on certain issues, we can have trilateral agreements on tourism, economy, environment, and other issues. And we must try to find an alternative with these two principles of separation, of autonomy without the ability to hurt our security, and regional component. With regard to relations with Washington, D.C., I believe that we should have a sincere dialogue to see what is possible, what is realistic to achieve. Let's not forget that even during the 2 terms of President Obama, Palestinians didn't take advantage on the fact that they have a president that really wanted to have a sympathy to their cause. And take these 8 years, I think we didn't have even 1 year of an effective negotiations between Israel and the PA. And this can tell you something about the real motivation of the Palestinians. So I would say we should have a sincere dialogue to find out what we can achieve, what pragmatic arrangements we can have progress with. I have certain ideas on these issues, and I think that today all the parties in the international community, and my impression is also the American administration, even though it supports the 2-state solution as an idea, are much more realistic with regard to what we can achieve on the ground in the short term.
All right, very interesting. So let me just ask you about 2 aspects of this equation you just outlined: separation, autonomy, regional component, dialogue with America. Let me ask you about 2 aspects of this. First, settlement ideas. You just advocated the notion of separation. Does that, what impact does that principle have on what you would support or not support in terms of further Israeli settlement within the West Bank, within Judea and Samaria?
I totally oppose evacuation of Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. I think this idea belongs to the past. It was proved it's not contributing to stability, to peace, and we must find out how to live together. I don't think to uproot communities, Jewish or Arabs, are helpful to the cause of peace.
And last year, the government of Israel made a decision when faced with 2 alternatives: the attraction of peace agreements with the Arab states, such as the UAE, and the appeal of annexation, extending Israeli sovereignty over parts of the West Bank. And it chose to accept the Emirates' demand for suspending annexation in order to reach that agreement. Do you agree with that choice? Is that the sort of choice you would have made? And how important to you is the idea of extending Israeli sovereignty in the territories?
First of all, that's the reality. I will not deny that I support the idea of implementing the Israeli law over our communities in Judea and Samaria. It is something that continues to be an Israeli objective. And I'm not speaking about the Palestinian populated areas. I'm speaking about our communities. We have there 500,000 of our residents, and they should live under the Israeli law. But the Prime Minister Netanyahu committed himself in the dialogue with the American administration, the Trump administration at the time, which was a very friendly administration to Israel, and we are thankful for that, to suspend the idea of implementing our sovereignty for a couple of years. As the Prime Minister of Israel, I will respect a commitment that was given by an Israeli Prime Minister to an American administration. And as an Israeli Prime Minister, I would like to promote and to try together with the new administration in Washington to work on adding more states to the normalization process with Israel. I think that eventually it can be very constructive for the cause of stability and peace, even though the PA was not happy about it, to say the least. But I think eventually to the idea of peace between Israelis and Arabs in the region, including the Palestinians, it will be constructive. So I would continue this process. I will respect the commitment given by the Prime Minister, but as an objective of Israel, I personally and majority of Knesset members, to my mind, still see it as an objective to implement the Israeli law over our communities in Judea and Samaria, not over the Palestinian populated area there.
And just more generally, how important is it to you to have these agreements with countries as far away as Morocco and Sudan? And is it, how does this fit into your own vision of Israel's national security?
I think it is important that we can see on the ground today that the old Arab-Israeli conflict is eventually shrinking into a Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And it is very important for the Palestinians themselves that thought in the past they can live with rejectionism without paying any kind of price, to finally understand that the region want to go forward, that different countries feel they can earn from cooperation, from economic ties between them. And I think it is a very good news for all the people of the region.
Gideon, I have quite a few questions that are coming in, actually a flood of them coming in, and I'm bringing some of them together. Lots of questioners were quite moved by your remark about the search for national unity, and ask, how do you propose to build national unity? One, with the Israeli Arab community, and two, with the Haredi community that seems so far out of the mainstream on such issues as even obeying COVID regulations.
Well, this is one of Israel's, both communities are an important challenge to be advanced. And when we are speaking about Israeli Arabs, the challenge is integration. And I think today we have more and more Israeli citizens that feel they want to be integrated into the state, to have future for their kids. They not necessarily feels that the joint Arab list, which got in the last elections about 90% or so of their votes, are representing the real interest of them, because they sometimes enjoying from disintegration or friction and not necessarily from processes of integration. So I think it is extremely important, and it depends on us more than to solve our conflict with the Palestinians. It is more in our hands to make progress in that respect. In terms of the ultra-Orthodox community, we also have challenges. As a Minister of Education in the past, I promoted higher education among ultra-Orthodox. I opened also a vocational professional schools for students that dropped from the world of the Torah, of the yeshivot. And I think we should do more in order to integrate the ultra-Orthodox sector in our economy, in our society. And I feel that there is also a desire there, maybe not everywhere in that sector, but there is a lot of people that want to be integrated. I think I know how to do it. When I was Minister of Education, I dealt, for example, with how we can make an equivalent for the girls who are learning in the ultra-Orthodox system to the general matriculation test, in order that they will easily be integrated in higher education and also in work, generally speaking. And we had progress, and we can have much more progress. And it is very important, since these two segments of our society, which are of course very different one from another, but the common thing is that they are growing in terms of demography. So it is very important that they will be better integrated in our society and in our economy.
Let me go back to a couple of international questions, if I can, Gideon. The IDF Chief of Staff recently gave a very tough speech warning against diplomacy with Iran, and actually raising, at least implicitly, the threat of military action against Iran's nuclear facilities. The US is considering re-engaging diplomatically with Iran. What's your view of what the Chief of Staff said, and what's your approach to addressing this extremely important security challenge for Israel?
I would say that the Israeli Chief of Staff, Mr. Kochavi, brought, I would say, more or less the Israeli consensus on the issue of Iran. And he brought his professional view on the matter, and I respect and support his professional view on the matter. United States and Israel have a common goal and the common interest not to let Iran possess nuclear weapon. And this is something that I think we have in common. We might have some differences of how we can achieve that goal, but the best thing is to speak directly and honestly on the issue, because it is extremely important. It's not only an Israeli consensus. Today, it's also a regional consensus in the Middle East, because if Iran will get nuclear, then we will enter to a nuclear race in all the Middle East. And that can be very, very dangerous. Different neighboring countries will not let themselves stay behind, and they will want to get nuclear as well. And this will be very problematic in terms of regional stability. So what I would like to do, if I will have the trust of the citizens of Israel and be elected to this important office of Prime Minister of Israel is to have a sincere and effective dialogue with the American administration on how we can achieve this common goal. It's not only an Israeli goal. I believe it's something which is also in the national security, heart of national security of America. And it's not undermined, of course, the things that Israel can do as a sovereign state. This is something that we will always have, and we have a history of protecting ourselves from nuclear threats. We had done it in the past in Iraq. We had done it in the past in Syria. But there is no doubt it is extremely important to try to do our utmost to find a common language, not only about the objective, but also about how to do it, and to come to these talks with a goodwill. And we saw during the last years that Iran very openly didn't respect the JCPOA. They violated it. They are violating it until today with regard to the enrichment process. They threatening inspectors to throw them, even though they are not letting them inspect really. And we saw also what Iran did during that time in other respects, like spreading terror in the region, developing its missiles program. And I believe these new facts will be also considered in Washington. And what we see from the Iranians, also from the day that Biden took office, is that they are only putting preconditions and making all kinds of provocations. And it is clear they are not working with goodwill, but trying to achieve unilateral achievements, which I think that it is not in the interest of the United States to give them.
You just made mention to the period in which Joe Biden has been serving as president, which is only a few weeks, and so we only have a few data points to look at. There have been some interesting and important statements regarding policy toward Israel and the Middle East. The affirmation of the embassy staying in Jerusalem, for example, the statement just recently about Israel staying on the Golan, but hesitancy, reluctance to recognize sovereignty on the Golan, and then great statement of great concern about the International Criminal Court and its announcement that it will formally open an investigation regarding Israel. When you put all these and some other statements together, do you have a view already of how the new administration is shaping up in terms of its approach to your country?
I think the approach that the Secretary of State showed to the issue of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel was positive. We might see some differences on the issue, on the words he said with regard to the sovereignty on the Golan Heights, but still I noticed that he didn't change anything in that respect. We might have also some differences between us. It is something that also happened in the past with regard to different issues. And I found out that also on the issue of the ICC, Secretary of State, rightly so, was worried from the decision, which is a political decision, which is shameful, against the Oslo Accords. By the way, we spoke before about the idea of a Palestinian state, but we saw here that even before a Palestinian state was created, the ICC said it is a Palestinian state, which is ridiculous. And it also demonstrated to us what can be some of the consequences of a creation of such a state in the terms of the ability to Israel to defend itself. And I think Israel is the most attacked country in the world. It is really shameful that from all countries, the ICC choose to undermine Israel's rights for self-defense. So altogether, I think the statements you mentioned was positive, even though we might see some difference on one of the issues. And it is also among friends something that happened. I think that with regard to several issues, we had great relations, but some disputes on policy issues between Washington and Jerusalem during the years. The most important thing that we must stand on our national interests, and we will stand firm on our national interests.
Okay, very good. We only have a few moments left, and I have a long list of questions that I'm trying to pull together.
You should choose then.
I am going to choose. But I want to ask a couple of overarching questions. Look, for better or for worse, the world knows a lot about your incumbent prime minister. He's been prime minister for a very long time. What do you want your allies and your adversaries to know about you, about what makes you tick? What should your enemies and your allies know about you?
I'm a proud Jew and a proud Zionist. I dedicate my life for the state of Israel. I served as an infantry soldier, but I'm still serving my country as a public servant. I am a husband, a father. I have 4 kids. I have also grandson, and their future is important for me. And I can only ensure their future by making the future of Israel be more secure and prosperous. I'm also a son of an immigrant, came to Israel, made Aliyah to Israel in 1965 from Argentina. He was a Zionist. He came alone from all his family. As so many Jews had done in order to build this country, we had only few hundreds of thousands of people when we established our state, but now we are more than 9 million people in this great state. And I believe we have the greatest people. We can make a better future for us by changing direction. And this is what motivated me to form my new party. And it is more important for me and more meaningful for me from anything I can do in the private sector.
A lot of people are asking me, Gideon, over your left shoulder, there's a picture of Jabotinsky, and below Jabotinsky, Herzl. How should viewers be interpreting this ideological placement?
That I'm a loyal student of Herzl and Jabotinsky. My father came to Israel on the ship that was called Theodor Herzl, and he was the founder of the Zionist movement as a practical movement. Within 8 years, he created a revolution and really changed the history of our people. Jabotinsky is the Zionist leader, which I believe in his views, not only in terms of Iron Wall and other ideas connected to the struggle of Zionism, but also on liberal issues as equality between men and women, for example. And this is what I believe in, liberal Zionism.
Very good. Gideon Saar, I want to thank you very much. I think this was a very revealing conversation to help our viewers understand who you are and what your leadership might portend for the future of the State of Israel.
Thank you for this conversation, Rob, and I hope we will meet again soon in Jerusalem or in Washington, or both.
Very good. And thank you to all of you joining us on all of our platforms for this special event, the Special Policy Forum of the Washington Institute. Signing off.